On a chilly autumn evening
Guilty
in
on
the
all
quiet
charges, this
suburban
court is
town of
adjourned.
Cedarville, the unexpected shattered the calm when 14-year-old Lily Harper confessed to the murder of her neighbor, Mr. Thompson. The revelation came during a routine counseling session at Cedarville Middle School, where Lily had been sent after displaying signs of withdrawal and anxiety. The counselor, initially concerned about Lily's mental health, was stunned when the girl, with an unsettling calmness, admitted to taking Mr. Thompson's life. Mr. Thompson was a well-known and respected figure in Cedarville, a retired school principal who had spent decades contributing to the community. His home sat on Maple Street, a quiet cul-de-sac lined with old oak trees and neatly kept lawns. News of his death sent ripples of shock through the town, the kind that unsettles even the most tightly knit neighborhoods. Before we delve into this chilling tale of innocence lost and the weight of a guilty verdict, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up to stay updated on our latest stories. And I'm curious, where are you tuning in from tonight? When police officers arrived at the Thompson residence that evening, the scene was eerily devoid of the violence one might expect from such a brutal crime. Mr. Thompson's body was discovered in the living room, lifeless from multiple stab wounds. Yet, despite the severity of the attack, there were no signs of forced entry. The front door was locked from the inside, windows were intact, and personal belongings lay undisturbed on shelves and tables. It was as if the killer had been invited in or already had access. Detective Maria Alvarez was the first to arrive and immediately took note of the unusual circumstances. The absence of a break-in suggested familiarity. Either the victim knew his assailant or the perpetrator had a way to bypass typical security. The crime scene was meticulously documented, with forensic teams scouring for any trace of evidence that could shed light on the identity of the murderer. Lily Harper's confession was both a breakthrough and a puzzle. The teenager's demeanor was disconcertingly calm, almost detached, as she recounted the events. This composure set off alarms for Detective Alvarez, who had dealt with many young suspects, but rarely encountered one so composed in the face of such a grave admission. The complexity of the case deepened with Lily's statement, as investigators struggled to reconcile her age and the violent act she claimed to have committed. Initial interviews with Lily's family painted a picture of an ordinary life. Her parents described her as a quiet but well-behaved girl, excelling academically but recently withdrawn. Friends and teachers noted that she had become increasingly isolated over the past few weeks. Yet no one anticipated the dark secret she was harboring. The forensic team's early findings added layers of complexity. The murder weapon, kitchen knife belonging to Mr. Thompson, was found wiped clean of fingerprints, but bore traces of blood matching the victim. However, the presence of other unknown DNA suggested that someone else had handled the weapon around the time of the murder. This critical detail hinted at the possibility of more than one person involved or an attempt to cover up the crime. Establishing the timeline was another challenge. According to school records and witness statements, Lily had been attending a school event that evening, participating in a group project presentation scheduled to last well into the night. Her presence there was initially accepted as an alibi, but the timing of Mr. Thompson's death was vague, estimated between 7 and 9 p.m., overlapping with the school event. Detective Alvarez ordered a thorough review of all available footage from nearby security cameras and doorbell video systems. Cedarville was a town that had embraced technology for neighborhood watch purposes, and many residents had installed cameras to monitor their properties. These devices often captured more than just mundane daily activities. They became silent witnesses to critical moments. Neighbors, initially incredulous about Lily's confession, were interviewed extensively. Many spoke of Mr. Thompson as a kind mentor to neighborhood children, including Lily, who had often been seen in his company. Yet, whispers began to circulate about recent tensions, though no one could specify what had changed. Amidst the mounting evidence and conflicting accounts, the police faced mounting pressure from the community and the media. The story of a young girl admitting to such a violent crime unsettled many, challenging preconceived notions of innocence and culpability. As Detective Alvarez delved deeper into the investigation, she knew that every detail mattered. From Lily's calm confession to the untouched crime scene, every piece was a clue in a puzzle that defied simple explanation. The night wore on as investigators pieced together the fragments of a story that had shattered the peace of Cedarville. The chilling reality was that beneath the sleepy surface of the suburb lay secrets that only now were beginning to emerge. Secrets that involved a young girl and the man she claimed to have killed. Detective Maria Alvarez found herself confronting a labyrinth of questions as the investigation into Mr. Thompson's murder deepened. Lily Harper's unsettling calm during her confession had initially raised suspicion, but it was the forensic analysis that began to unravel the layers of the case, revealing inconsistencies that neither the community nor law enforcement could ignore. The kitchen knife, the apparent murder weapon, was the first piece of physical evidence to come under scrutiny. It belonged to Mr. Thompson, having been a staple in his household for years, and it was recovered from the kitchen's drawer, wiped clean but still bearing traces of the victim's blood. However, forensic specialists discovered a puzzling detail. Lily's fingerprints were found on the knife, but alongside them were unknown DNA traces that did not match either Lily or Mr. Thompson. This discovery suggested the possibility of a third party, someone who had handled the weapon around the time of the murder or in its aftermath. Detective Alvarez knew that this DNA could be the key to unlocking the mystery, but it also complicated the investigation. If Lily was involved, as her confession indicated, was she acting alone? Or was she covering for someone else? The presence of this unknown DNA introduced doubt about the straightforwardness of Lily's admission. Simultaneously, the timeline of the murder began to raise further questions. School records confirmed that Lily had been registered at a group project presentation on the evening of the murder, an event scheduled from 6:30 to 9 p.m. Several classmates recalled seeing her there, engaged and attentive. This testimony initially seemed to support her alibi, creating a conflict with her confession. However, Detective Alvarez was not ready to accept these accounts at face value. She ordered a detailed review of attendance records and surveillance footage from the school, hoping to pinpoint Lily's exact whereabouts during the critical window of time. The footage revealed that Lily had arrived at the event late and, more importantly, had left the venue for a short period in the middle of the presentation. This absence, lasting approximately 30 minutes, coincided suspiciously with the estimated time of Mr. Thompson's murder. Further investigation into phone records showed that Lily's cell phone was inactive during this interval, adding to the mystery. The phone's location data placed her near the Thompson residence, contradicting her initial claim of continuous presence at school. This evidence painted a radically different picture from the one Lily had provided, suggesting that her confession, though explicit, might not have been entirely truthful or complete. Detective Alvarez also noted that Lily's demeanor during questioning was peculiar. While her initial confession was calm and composed, subsequent interviews revealed inconsistencies and vague statements. At times, she seemed disengaged, almost rehearsing her answers, while at other moments, she appeared evasive and reluctant to elaborate. This oscillation raised concerns about whether Lily fully understood the gravity of the situation or was being influenced by external factors. The community's reaction to these revelations was a mix of disbelief and fear. Neighbors who had once viewed Lily as a quiet, innocent child now grappled with the possibility of her involvement in a violent crime. The police department, meanwhile, faced mounting pressure to explain the contradictions in the case and to identify any additional suspects. In the midst of this turmoil, Detective Alvarez ordered a thorough search of the Thompson home and surrounding areas. Investigators combed the property for overlooked clues, hoping to find evidence that could clarify the sequence of events. They discovered subtle signs of disturbance in the backyard, including scuff marks near the side gate and a broken plant pot, suggesting a possible hurried exit or entry. These details hinted that the crime might have involved a struggle or an attempt to stage the scene. Interviews with neighbors added further complexity. Several reported hearing raised voices and a commotion around the estimated time of the murder, though no one had seen anyone entering or leaving the house. One neighbor recalled seeing a shadowy figure near the back gate, but could not identify who it was. These accounts, while fragmented, suggested that the murder was not as straightforward as initially thought. Detective Alvarez also began to explore Lily's relationships within the community and school. Teachers described her as a diligent student, but noted recent changes in her behavior: withdrawal from friends and increased irritability. Classmates mentioned that she had been under stress due to family issues, but none anticipated that this pressure would lead to violence. The detective's growing suspicion was that Lily's confession might be a cover for deeper, undisclosed circumstances. The investigation team sought to understand Lily's psychological state and motivations. A child psychologist was brought in to evaluate her, aiming to determine whether her confession was a product of trauma, coercion, or an attempt to protect someone else. Early assessment suggested that Lily was grappling with complex emotions and possibly fear, but the evaluation was ongoing. Meanwhile, the forensic lab expedited the analysis of the unknown DNA found on the knife. The hope was that a match could reveal an accomplice or a previously unidentified suspect. Until then, the investigation remained open-ended, with Lily's confession standing as a troubling but incomplete piece of the puzzle. As the days passed, Detective Alvarez remained focused on unraveling the truth behind the murder. The contradictions in Lily's statements, the forensic anomalies, and the timeline discrepancies all pointed to a case far more complicated than a single act of violence by a troubled teenager. With every new piece of evidence, the detective prepared for a deeper dive into the shadows that surrounded Mr. Thompson's death and Lily Harper's role in it. The quiet suburban streets of Cedarville buzzed with tension as news of Lily Harper's confession spread through the community. The media descended rapidly, their cameras and microphones capturing the faces of neighbors, teachers, and friends struggling to reconcile the image of the bright, reserved teenager with the brutal crime she had admitted to. The town, which had once prided itself on safety and close-knit ties, now wrestled with fear and disbelief. Local news outlets aired nightly segments, dissecting the story with a mixture of fascination and horror. Panel discussions debated how a 14-year-old could be involved in such violence, while social media exploded with opinions ranging from sympathy for Lily's troubled state to outright condemnation. Parents questioned the safety of their own children, and Cedarville's schools faced an atmosphere thick with unease. Amid the media frenzy, Lily found herself thrust into the eye of a storm she neither seemed prepared for nor fully understood. Her initial confession, given during a private counseling session, became public knowledge almost overnight. She was subjected to exhaustive questioning by law enforcement, her statements shifting as she navigated the pressure of the investigation. At first, Lily maintained a vague recounting of the events, offering little detail beyond her admission. Her answers were cautious, sometimes contradictory, and often left more questions than answers. Detectives noted that her demeanor ranged from distant to defensive, a stark contrast to the calmness she had displayed during her initial confession. It became clear that Lily was struggling with the weight of the situation and the attention it brought. Detective Maria Alvarez, leading the investigation, recognized the complexity of working with a minor in such circumstances. She was careful to ensure that Lily's rights were protected while probing for the truth. Alvarez and her team conducted multiple interviews, each peeling back layers of confusion and uncertainty. In parallel, efforts were made to review surveillance footage from the streets surrounding Mr. Thompson's home. Cedarville's neighborhood had embraced security cameras over recent years, and many residents had installed doorbell cameras and street monitors. These devices offered a digital watchfulness that in many ways promised safety, but also recorded fragments of lives that might otherwise remain unseen. The collected footage revealed a series of movements on the night of the murder that raised eyebrows. A figure matching Lily's description was seen leaving the vicinity of Mr. Thompson's house around the estimated time of the crime. This contradicted her earlier statements about remaining at the school event. The footage was grainy, but the timing and context were troubling. Furthermore, other clips captured unusual activity around the neighborhood. Cars making unexplained stops, shadows moving in unexpected patterns. But none were immediately linked to the case. Detectives sifted through hours of recordings, searching for any clue to corroborate or challenge Lily's narrative. Interviews with classmates and neighbors added depth to the investigation. Some students described Lily as withdrawn and quiet, but did not suspect she was capable of violence. Others hinted at subtle changes in her behavior in recent weeks, noting moments of agitation and secrecy. A few classmates recounted overhearing fragments of conversations that suggested Lily was under significant stress. Neighbors, too, painted a complex picture. Many spoke fondly of Mr. Thompson, recalling his role as a mentor and friend. Yet a small number mentioned hearing raised voices or noticing tension between Lily and Mr. Thompson in the days before his death. These accounts, though anecdotal, hinted at a relationship that was not as simple as it had seemed. Detective Alvarez took particular interest in these testimonies, recognizing that understanding the dynamics between Lily and Mr. Thompson could be key to unraveling motive and intent. She arranged for in-depth interviews with those closest to both individuals, including family members and friends, hoping to identify any conflicts or incidents that might have precipitated the tragedy. Throughout the process, Lily's story remained inconsistent. At times, she acknowledged a relationship with Mr. Thompson, describing him as a mentor figure. While at other moments, she distanced herself, offering vague explanations for her actions. The contradictions suggested either confusion, fear, or an attempt to hide something deeper. The detective also noted the emotional toll the investigation was taking on Lily. Despite her outward composure, moments of vulnerability surfaced during interviews, revealing a young girl overwhelmed by circumstances beyond her control. Counselors and psychologists working with Lily emphasized the importance of support and careful handling as the case moved forward. Meanwhile, the media continued to spotlight the story, often drawing speculation and sensationalism. Headlines questioned how a child could commit such a violent act, while opinion pieces debated the role of family, community, and mental health in the tragedy. The pressure on law enforcement to solve the case and provide answers intensified. As the days passed, the investigation steadily expanded beyond initial assumptions. Detective Alvarez and her team balanced the need for thoroughness with sensitivity, aware that the case involved not only a crime, but a young life at its center. They worked to piece together a coherent narrative from the conflicting accounts and fragmented evidence, knowing that the truth was essential both for justice and for the community's healing. In the background, Lily's role in the town's unfolding drama remained fraught with uncertainty. Was she the sole perpetrator, or was there more beneath the surface? The investigation continued, probing the shadows of a case that challenged everyone involved to look beyond appearances and confront uncomfortable realities. Surveillance footage from the night of Mr. Thompson's murder became a crucial focal point as Detective Maria Alvarez and her team painstakingly reviewed hours of video from the neighborhood's array of security cameras. The grainy images captured subtle but significant movements that challenged earlier assumptions about Lily, Harper's whereabouts and involvement. Among the footage was a clip from a doorbell camera installed 2 houses down from the Thompson residence. The timestamp placed it at approximately 7:45 p.m., within the estimated window of the murder. The video showed a figure, slender and wearing a dark hoodie, leaving the vicinity of Mr. Thompson's home and walking briskly down the street. While the image was blurred, the figure's stature and gait closely matched Lily's. This sighting directly contradicted her previous claims of remaining at the school event throughout the evening. Further analysis of the footage revealed Lily's presence near the school only after 8:20 p.m., several minutes after the figure had been seen near the Thompson house. When confronted with this evidence, Lily's earlier alibi began to unravel, adding weight to suspicions that her initial statements were incomplete or deliberately misleading. In addition to the surveillance contradicting her alibi, forensic investigators uncovered troubling details on Lily's clothing. Blood spatter analysis revealed traces of Mr. Thompson's blood on her jacket and shoes. The pattern and distribution suggested close proximity to the victim during or shortly after the attack. This evidence aligned with the timeline suggested by the surveillance footage, but deepened the mystery of Lily's motives and actions. Perhaps most perplexing was the discovery of gunshot residue on Lily's hands, a detail that confounded investigators given that the murder weapon was a kitchen knife. The presence of this residue raised several unsettling possibilities: that a firearm had been involved earlier and subsequently removed, or that Lily had handled a gun in a separate incident connected to the case. Neither scenario had been previously considered, opening new avenues for inquiry. Detective Alvarez sought to reconcile these contradictory pieces of evidence. The forensic team expanded their search, examining nearby properties, trash bins, and streets for any discarded weapons or items that might explain the gunshot residue. Simultaneously, they requested ballistic experts to analyze any possible links to firearms in the area during the time frame of the murder. Interviews with classmates and neighbors added further dimensions to the investigation. Several students disclosed that Lily had recently become secretive and withdrawn, often avoiding conversations and appearing anxious. Some mentioned overhearing tense discussions between Lily and Mr. Thompson, though details were scarce and often vague. One neighbor, a teacher at the local high school, recounted an unusual incident a week before the murder. She had seen Lily and Mr. Thompson engaged in a heated argument in his driveway. The neighbor described Lily as visibly upset, gesturing emphatically while Mr. Thompson appeared stern but calm. This confrontation hinted at underlying tensions between the two that had not been apparent to others. Another neighbor reported hearing a loud noise around 7:40 p.m. on the night of the murder, followed by a brief silence. Moments later, a car was seen speeding away from the cul-de-sac, although the vehicle's make and driver could not be identified. The report suggested a hurried departure that might be connected to the crime. Detective Alvarez also uncovered information about Lily's social circle. Conversations with friends revealed that she had been experiencing emotional turmoil related to family issues and school stress. Some friends mentioned that Lily had confided fears about a relationship with Mr. Thompson that was far from innocent, though they admitted to not fully understanding the nature of the connection. The dual presence of blood evidence and gunshot residue on Lily intensified the investigation's complexity. Forensic analysts theorized that the gunshot residue could have transferred from contact with another individual or object, rather than from firing a weapon herself. Tracing the source of this residue became a priority, as it could illuminate whether others were involved or if Lily had been in close proximity to someone armed. In light of these findings, Detective Alvarez authorized a re-examination of all physical evidence collected from the crime scene and surrounding areas. New tests were conducted on fibers, fingerprints, and DNA samples, searching for any trace of additional suspects or confirming Lily's sole involvement. The mounting evidence painted a picture of a crime far more intricate than a simple act by a troubled teen. The discrepancies between Lily's statements and the forensic data suggested a struggle to conceal the full truth, whether out of fear, confusion, or protection. Despite the pressure, Detective Alvarez remained focused on building a coherent narrative. She scheduled further interviews with those connected to Lily and Mr. Thompson, determined to unearth any hidden motives or relationships that might explain the violence. The investigation also expanded to include digital evidence. Cell phone records revealed that Lily's device had been turned off during the critical period, a detail that suggested an attempt to avoid tracking. Text messages between Lily and an unidentified contact were discovered, with cryptic phrases hinting at fear and secrecy, but lacking clarity. These messages added another layer of mystery, prompting the detective to seek assistance from cybercrime specialists to decode the digital trail. As the pieces slowly came together, the complexity of Lily's role in the murder became undeniable. Surveillance footage, forensic evidence, and witness testimonies collectively contradicted her initial account, revealing a tangled web of secrets and possible deception. Detective Alvarez understood that the path forward required careful navigation of facts and emotions, balancing the pursuit of justice with the recognition of Lily's youth and vulnerability. The investigation had moved beyond the surface, uncovering fractures in relationships and truths that the community had yet to confront. With the case growing more complicated by the day, the detective prepared to delve deeper into the shadows surrounding Mr. Thompson's death, determined to uncover the full story hidden beneath layers of silence and denial. As the investigation into Mr. Thompson's murder deepened, Detective Maria Alvarez turned her focus toward uncovering the underlying motives that could explain the tragic events. The growing body of evidence suggested a complex relationship between Lily Harper and Mr. Thompson, one that had shifted from mentorship to something darker in the weeks preceding the crime. Interviews with friends and family painted a picture of a once supportive connection. Mr. Thompson had been a mentor to Lily, offering guidance and encouragement during her early teenage years. He had volunteered as a tutor and was known to take an active interest in the neighborhood children's well-being. For a time, Lily had appeared to thrive under his wing, showing improved confidence and academic progress. However, as detectives delved into recent interactions between the two, cracks began to emerge. Several sources reported that tensions had escalated following Lily's discovery of unsettling secrets about Mr. Thompson's past. A series of confidential tips hinted at prior allegations of inappropriate behavior against the retired principal, though none had led to formal charges. The revelation had evidently strained their relationship, with Mr. Thompson growing increasingly defensive and Lily expressing fear and anger. Text messages recovered from Lily's phone provided further insight into her emotional state. Conversations with a close friend revealed a growing sense of distress. In one message, Lily wrote, "I don't know what to do anymore. He's not the person I thought he was." Another message read, "I'm scared he'll ruin everything if I tell anyone." These cryptic texts suggested a fear of exposure and a desire to distance herself from Mr. Thompson. Moreover, Lily had confided to a friend that she felt trapped by the situation. She described feeling manipulated and threatened, though she never explicitly detailed the nature of these threats. The friend recalled that Lily had been trying to avoid contact with Mr. Thompson, but struggled to break free from his influence, leading to emotional outbursts and heightened anxiety. Detective Alvarez pursued this lead, interviewing individuals who had interacted with both Lily and Mr. Thompson in the weeks before the murder. They uncovered reports of confrontations, verbal disputes marked by accusations and denials. One neighbor recounted overhearing a heated argument where Lily accused Mr. Thompson of betrayal, and he responded with veiled threats about consequences if she revealed certain information. The detective also explored the possibility that Lily's actions were driven by self-preservation. Evidence suggested that Mr. Thompson had threatened to expose aspects of their relationship to authorities or the community, which Lily feared would irreparably damage her life and future. This perceived threat may have pushed her toward desperate measures. In addition to emotional turmoil, Lily's attempts to distance herself were documented through her behavior. School counselors noted that she had been avoiding Mr. Thompson's calls and messages, yet he persisted in contacting her, escalating the pressure. The strain was evident in Lily's declining attendance and deteriorating academic performance. Detective Alvarez uncovered that Lily had sought support from a trusted adult shortly before the murder, expressing her fears and frustrations. However, the confidant was unable to intervene effectively, and the situation appeared to spiral beyond control. The investigation also revealed financial transactions that hinted at another layer of complexity. Records showed that Lily had attempted to access funds from Mr. Thompson's accounts shortly before his death. While the amounts were relatively small, the timing suggested a possible motive tied to financial gain or desperation. As the detective pieced together these elements, a narrative emerged of a young girl caught in a web of manipulation, fear, and escalating conflict. The relationship that had begun as mentorship had devolved into a toxic dynamic, marked by secrecy and coercion. Experts in adolescent psychology were consulted to interpret Lily's behavior within this context. They noted that teenagers in such situations often experience intense emotional distress, confusion, and a sense of entrapment, which can lead to impulsive or defensive actions. The complexity of Lily's psychological state underscored the challenges facing the investigation and the justice system in dealing with juvenile offenders. Detective Alvarez remained mindful of the delicate balance required in handling the case. While the evidence pointed toward premeditation and motive, there was also recognition of Lily's vulnerability and the external pressures that may have influenced her decisions. The community, meanwhile, grappled with the unsettling revelation of Mr. Thompson's hidden past and its impact on a young life. Conversations shifted toward the responsibilities of adults in positions of trust and the importance of vigilance in protecting vulnerable individuals. As the investigation continued, Detective Alvarez prepared to delve further into the tangled history between Lily and Mr. Thompson, seeking to uncover every facet of the relationship that had culminated in tragedy. The search for truth was as much about understanding human frailty as it was about justice, revealing the profound complexities at the heart of the case. Following months of meticulous investigation, the Cedarville District Attorney's Office formally charged Lily Harper with first-degree murder, signaling a shift from inquiry to prosecution. The weight of the charge reflected the accumulation of evidence suggesting premeditation and an attempt to conceal the crime, placing the case under intense scrutiny both locally and nationally. The announcement ignited widespread media coverage, turning the quiet town into a focal point of public discussion on juvenile justice. Headlines framed the case as a troubling example of youth violence, emphasizing the gravity of charging a minor with such a serious offense. News outlets debated the implications of holding a 14-year-old criminally responsible for a calculated act, while legal experts weighed in on the challenges ahead. Detective Maria Alvarez, whose investigative work had been central to the case, was called upon to provide detailed testimony in preparation for the trial. She outlined the evidence gathered: surveillance footage contradicting Lily's alibi, forensic data linking her to the crime scene, and the complex psychological background suggesting motive and intent. Her testimony was expected to form a cornerstone of the prosecution's argument. The prosecution's case emphasized the premeditated nature of the murder and the deliberate efforts made by Lily to conceal her involvement. Prosecutors highlighted inconsistencies in her statements, the presence of blood and gunshot residue on her clothing, and her knowledge of Mr. Thompson's vulnerabilities. They argued that these factors demonstrated a calculated decision to commit the crime and evade detection. Conversely, the defense team sought to challenge the narrative of cold calculation, instead portraying Lily as a troubled adolescent overwhelmed by trauma and manipulation. Central to their strategy was the argument that Lily's actions were impulsive and influenced by psychological distress stemming from her relationship with Mr. Thompson and the pressures she faced. The defense brought in expert witnesses specializing in adolescent psychology and trauma to testify about Lily's mental state. These experts discussed the impact of stress, fear, and coercion on decision-making in teenagers, emphasizing that developmental factors could diminish culpability. They argued for a nuanced understanding of Lily's behavior, advocating for treatment rather than harsh punishment. Preparation for the trial involved extensive review of digital evidence, including text messages and phone records, which painted a complex picture of Lily's interactions and emotional struggles. Both prosecution and defense scrutinized this data, seeking to interpret the subtleties of communication that might reveal intent, fear, or confusion. The trial was anticipated to be a landmark case, drawing attention to the broader issues of juvenile criminal responsibility. Legal scholars debated the appropriateness of charging minors with adult-level offenses, considering neurological research indicating ongoing brain development in adolescence. The case became a platform for discussing reforms in how the justice system addresses youthful offenders. Community response was mixed and deeply emotional. Some residents called for accountability and justice for Mr. Thompson, emphasizing the need to protect society from violent acts, regardless of the perpetrator's age. Others advocated for compassion toward Lily, highlighting her youth and the potential for rehabilitation. Support groups and counseling services saw increased demand as families grappled with the case's impact. In the weeks leading up to the trial, Detective Alvarez continued to assist prosecutors by clarifying investigative details and providing context for evidence presented. She also worked closely with victim advocacy organizations to ensure that Mr. Thompson's family received support throughout the legal process. The defense team prepared to challenge forensic findings and question the reliability of witness testimonies, aiming to introduce reasonable doubt about Lily's intent and the circumstances surrounding the murder. They planned to call upon character witnesses who could attest to Lily's history of good behavior and the emotional turmoil she had endured. Throughout the preparation, the psychological evaluations of Lily were updated, providing the court with ongoing assessments of her mental health. These reports played a critical role in shaping legal arguments about her capacity to understand and control her actions at the time of the crime. As the trial date approached, the tension in Cedarville remained palpable. The community braced for a courtroom battle that would test not only the evidence, but also the broader societal values regarding youth, accountability, and justice. Detective Alvarez reflected on the journey from the initial confession to the brink of trial, aware that the proceedings would bring to light painful truths and challenge assumptions. The case, she understood, was about more than a single act of violence. It was a mirror reflecting the complexities of adolescence, morality, and the law. With the courtroom set and legal teams prepared, Cedarville awaited the unfolding of a trial that promised to be as emotionally charged as it was legally significant, marking a pivotal moment in the intersection of juvenile justice and community healing. The courtroom in Cedarville was packed on the first day of Lily Harper's trial, the air thick with anticipation and unease. The case had captured national attention, not only because of the brutal murder of Mr. Thompson, but also due to the unprecedented nature of charging a 14-year-old with first-degree murder. As the trial unfolded, the community watched closely, grappling with the complex emotions and legal questions at its core. Prosecutors opened with a narrative of calculated betrayal. They presented Lily as a young girl who, despite her age, had meticulously planned the murder of her mentor to escape the consequences of their strained relationship. The opening statements highlighted the forensic evidence, the blood spatter on Lily's clothing, the surveillance footage placing her near the crime scene, and the inconsistencies in her alibi. They emphasized that Lily had the motive to silence Mr. Thompson, who threatened to expose damaging secrets. Detective Maria Alvarez was the first witness called to the stand. Her testimony was methodical and detailed, outlining the investigative steps that led to Lily's arrest. She described the discovery of the murder weapon, the forensic findings that implicated Lily, and the crucial surveillance footage that contradicted Lily's initial statements. Alvarez's calm demeanor and comprehensive knowledge of the case lent weight to the prosecution's argument. Expert witnesses followed, including forensic analysts who explained the significance of the gunshot residue found on Lily's hands despite the murder weapon being a knife. They suggested the possibility of an accomplice or prior contact with a firearm, further complicating the narrative. Psychologists testified about Lily's knowledge of Mr. Thompson's vulnerabilities and how that knowledge could have been used to plan the attack. The defense countered with a portrayal of Lily as a victim of trauma and manipulation. Her attorneys argued that her actions were impulsive, driven by fear and emotional distress rather than cold calculation. They highlighted her young age and the challenges of adolescent brain development, asserting that Lily lacked the maturity to fully comprehend the consequences of her actions. Psychologists called by the defense described Lily's mental state as fragile, marked by anxiety, confusion, and a history of coercion. They testified that her initial confession might have been influenced by overwhelming guilt and fear, rather than an accurate recounting of events. The defense suggested that Lily's conflicting statements were the result of trauma, not deceit. Friends, counselors, and teachers provided testimony that painted Lily as a troubled but essentially good-hearted girl struggling with overwhelming emotional burdens. They described her recent withdrawal from social activities, her erratic mood swings, and her attempts to seek help. These personal accounts aimed to humanize Lily and challenge the notion of her as a calculating criminal. Cross-examinations were intense, with prosecutors challenging the defense's experts on the reliability of adolescent psychological assessments. They questioned witnesses about the inconsistencies in Lily's stories and the physical evidence that pointed to premeditation. The courtroom became a battleground of competing interpretations of the same facts. Throughout the trial, the prosecution and defense grappled with the interpretation of digital evidence. Text messages and phone records were dissected to reveal Lily's emotional state and possible motives. The prosecution argued that cryptic texts indicated planning and concealment, while the defense maintained they reflected a frightened teenager's confusion and distress. The jury was presented with a complex tapestry of evidence and testimony, forcing them to weigh scientific facts against psychological insights and personal narratives. The case raised fundamental questions about culpability, intent, and the capacity for judgment in someone so young. As deliberations began, the community remained divided. Some saw the verdict as a test of justice and protection for victims, while others feared the harsh consequences for a child caught in circumstances beyond her control. The trial had ignited broader conversations about juvenile sentencing and the role of rehabilitation versus punishment. After days of careful consideration, the jury returned with a verdict. Lily Harper was found guilty of first-degree murder. The decision reflected their conclusion that the prosecution had proven beyond a reasonable doubt that Lily had acted with intent and premeditation. The courtroom was tense as the verdict was read. Lily's expression remained composed, a mixture of resignation and disbelief. Her family members wept quietly, while Mr. Thompson's relatives expressed a somber sense of closure. The conviction sparked immediate debate. Advocates for juvenile justice reform voiced concerns about the severity of the sentence and the implications for young offenders nationwide. Legal experts analyzed the case as a landmark moment in the ongoing discourse about adolescent brain development and criminal responsibility. Detective Alvarez, reflecting on the trial's outcome, recognized the case's complexity and the profound challenges it posed. The verdict underscored the difficult balance between seeking justice for victims and acknowledging the unique vulnerabilities of youth. As the community of Cedarville began to process the verdict, the trial left an indelible mark on its collective consciousness. It served as a stark reminder of the fragile line between innocence and culpability, and the enduring questions about how society should respond when that line is crossed by its youngest members. Following the jury's guilty verdict, the sentencing phase for Lily Harper unfolded amid a mixture of relief, sorrow, and heated debate within the Cedarville community. The courtroom was heavy with emotion as the judge delivered a lengthy sentence. A significant juvenile detention term accompanied by mandatory psychological treatment. The decision underscored the seriousness of the crime while acknowledging Lily's age and the need for rehabilitation. The sentence ignited national conversations about the justice system's handling of young offenders. Advocates for reform argued that Lily's case highlighted the shortcomings of imposing harsh penalties on juveniles without fully considering their developmental stage and potential for change. Critics contended that the severity of the crime warranted a firm response, emphasizing the need to protect society and deliver justice for victims. Local organizations and mental health professionals called for increased support services for troubled youth, pointing to Lily's psychological evaluations that revealed deep-seated trauma and emotional instability. The case became a catalyst for discussions on how schools, families, and communities can better identify and intervene in situations where young people are at risk. Cedarville itself struggled to reconcile the tragedy. Memorials for Mr. Thompson were established, honoring his decades of service and his commitment to the community. Scholarships in his name aimed to continue his legacy of mentorship and education. Simultaneously, support groups emerged to help families affected by juvenile crime, fostering dialogue and healing. Inside the juvenile detention center, Lily faced the stark reality of her sentence. The transition from community to confinement was profound, marked by the challenges of adapting to life behind bars and grappling with guilt and remorse. Psychological treatment became a central part of her daily routine, offering a path toward understanding her actions and addressing underlying issues. Over time, Lily's reflections deepened. Isolated from the outside world, she began to confront the complexities of her relationship with Mr. Thompson and the choices that led to his death. The therapeutic process revealed layers of manipulation, fear, and confusion that had clouded her judgment, providing insight into the factors that contributed to the tragedy. The case of Lily Harper remained a touchstone in discussions about juvenile justice reform. Legal experts, psychologists, and policymakers debated how to balance accountability with compassion, striving to create systems that protect communities while offering second chances to young offenders capable of growth. For Cedarville, the aftermath was a period of healing and introspection. The community worked to rebuild trust and safety, implementing programs focused on youth support, education, and mental health awareness. The tragedy served as a sobering reminder of the vulnerabilities within even the most seemingly peaceful neighborhoods. Lily's story continued to resonate beyond the courtroom and correctional facilities. It became a case study in law schools and psychology programs, illustrating the intricate interplay of adolescent development, trauma, and criminal behavior. The lessons learned influenced evolving practices in juvenile justice, shaping policies aimed at more nuanced and effective responses. As years passed, Lily's journey remained a complex narrative of loss, accountability, and the potential for redemption. Her experience highlighted the critical importance of early intervention and the profound impact of trusted relationships on young lives. The case of Lily Harper stands as a cautionary tale, reflecting the multifaceted challenges faced by families, communities, and the justice system in addressing juvenile crime. It underscores the need for continued dialogue, empathy, and reform to navigate the delicate balance between justice and rehabilitation in a society striving to protect its most vulnerable members.